we will be continuing with Unit E, Space Science. We are going to start section 1.3 in your textbook. Spacecraft has helped us explore beyond Earth. There are two key concepts for this section. The first one, astronauts explore space near Earth, and the next one is spacecraft carry instruments to other worlds. So astronauts explore space near Earth, and every single time astronauts make the journey to go to space, they need to take everything with them essential for survival. And this includes air, water, food, and other amenities that may be important to them. So the rockets that are very large, they need to have very large amount of fuel and be extremely powerful in order to go against gravity and go into the sky. So once the space astronauts are there, they will have to adjust to the special weightless environment. Remember, there is microgravity in space, essentially meaning that gravity is non-existent. So as fun as that may sound, it does prove to have some difficulties. So I'm sure you guys have heard of the term satellite. So what is a satellite? A satellite is any object that orbits a more massive object. So remember, a moon is considered to be a satellite because it naturally orbits the Earth. So a moon is not a planet because planets need to orbit the sun. So a moon is classified as being a satellite. Now there have been several moon missions. So the USA was the first to send a man to the moon in 1969, and there was 3 steps that they needed to follow in order to succeed in this moon mission. The first one is that NASA, they had to prepare for this, so they had to first ensure that landing on moon was possible in the first place. Because remember, back then they did not even know the structure and the texture of the moon's surface. So that was the first step. The second step is that NASA began the landing on the moon program, and this was called Apollo, and they achieved success in 1969 when they managed to get the first man on the moon. And the last step was taking the scientific results that the astronauts brought back, such as pieces of rocks, and analyzing them in order so that scientists can know more about the moon's surface and interior. So once the astronauts start their journey and manage to take everything with them that they need to space, they reside in what's known as a space station. So a space station is a satellite in which people can live and work in for long periods of time. So scientists can work in space stations and perform several experiments that they may be hard to carry out on Earth or may have some difficulties. So a lot of experiments have been done in space, such as the growth of human cell tissue, and this has proved to be successful in space due to the difference of effect that gravity has on objects out in space compared to the effect gravity has on objects here on Earth. So that is one benefit of setting up space stations in space. Also, the US and the Soviet Union, they launched first space stations in the early 1970s, where they first worked as competitors. However, when the Soviet Union eventually broke up and became known as Russia, then the US and Russia decided to join forces and work together in order to try to understand what was happening in space a bit more. So once the US and Russia started working together, 15 other nations also joined, and they started to build what is known as the International Space Station, and the construction began in 1998. So when completed, because it's still not completed, the ISS will cover an area approximately equal to 2 football fields. So if you take a look at page 24 in your textbook, you will see just how large this ISS is. And since the ISS is too large to launch out all in one piece, basically they've been launching pieces of the ISS to space, and it is being assembled together in space as it orbits over years. So it's a very interesting tasks that they have undertaken. So whenever astronauts go out to space to reach the ISS, they will take space shuttles. And because space shuttles have a very large or vast amount to carry the huge cargo that they will need in order to survive. Currently, in order to go explore other planets, there are spacecrafts that are sent there. However, they are sent without humans or without a crew. And the reason for this is that the trip to reach other planets and other worlds will take years in order to accomplish, and as well as the question of how much water and air and food needs to be taken is a huge problem for astronauts, as well as the fact that the planets, their surface is so unknown that we don't even know if there's a surface to land on. So such obstacles like this can be easily resolved by sending a spacecraft without crew members. So when this is done, the spacecraft will be guided by radio signals from Earth, and the data and images are sent back to Earth as radio signals. And once again, the benefits for doing this, sending a spacecraft without humans, is that it's less expensive to carry out, and also there's no risk to humans. So there are some terms that you need to familiarize yourself with when it comes to talking about spacecrafts and astronauts and journeys. The first one are flybys. So the first stage in space exploration is to send out a spacecraft that passes several planets or bodies in space without orbiting them. So that is without circling them. So these missions are known as flybys. Now, flybys are controlled by small controllers here on Earth, and this will help to adjust its directions. Flyby missions can last for years, and as the flybys pass planets, it passes very, very quickly, yet a lot of data can be collected as well as images. So flyby spacecraft passes a planet, and as it passes planets, it gains energy from the gravity of the planets. So this will help to change its speed and change direction, and this could allow for more information to be gotten about more planets. The second stage in space exploration is to study one planet over a long period of time, and this period of time can extend from months to a couple years. So as an orbiter spacecraft approaches a planet, it slows down and will go into an orbit around the planet. Now, orbiter spacecrafts allow astronomers to create detailed maps of planets and keep track of changes that occur over time. So they can keep track of weather changes, volcanic activity changes, and so forth. So there are three ways on how an orbiter can provide data. The first one is that instruments on the orbiter will map a planet's surface and collect data. The second way is that the orbiter will send images and data to Earth in the form of radio waves, and this will be collected by radio telescopes here on Earth. And the third way is that scientists will use computers to analyze images and data. So these first, second, and third, these are steps in which an orbiter will help to provide us with data. Now, the third stage in space exploration is to land instruments on a planet or to send instruments through its atmosphere. So these missions use crafts known as lander. So how do the landers actually land on the planet? So a parachute can be used, and this will slow down a lander as it descends to a planet's surface. Earth controllers will help to navigate the lander exploration. And usually the lander will have mechanical arms for reaching out and gathering soil and rock samples in order to bring back to Earth to analyze. Also, some landers contain a small vehicle known as a rover. These vehicles will move and explore beyond the launching site. Now, these landers will help to provide us with more detailed information because they'll take more detailed images as compared to an orbiter, which will just orbit the planet, because landers are actually landed on the planet. Now, the data will include information about the different features and properties of a planet's atmosphere, surface, and also its history. So this can be very informative to the astronomers. The other thing is that one of the most successful space missions was that of the Mars Pathfinder. Now this Mars Pathfinder helped us to show that water once flowed on Mars, and whenever there is water, that is proof or evidence for life. So that became the whole theory that there could be life on Mars. So how did these landers leave the planet? Well, usually these spacecrafts are designed to work for only short periods of time before they are eventually destroyed by the conditions of the planet. Another spacecraft that's used to actually explore the planet's atmosphere is called a probe. Now, a probe is an instrument that drops down through the planet's atmosphere, and as it does so, it helps to identify gases and measure the properties of the atmosphere, such as pressure and temperature. So once again, this is very informative because this will help us to know the different types of gases that exist on different planets. Also, another point worth mentioning is that missions can be confined. So what this means is that a lander and a probe mission can be combined with an orbiter spacecraft. So for example, an orbiter may arrive at a planet and then go into orbit around the planet. Once it does this, then it can release a probe or lander at the planet. So we know a lander spacecraft will just land on the planet and start exploring its surroundings, whereas the probe will descend through the planet's atmosphere and collect data about its properties and gases. Once the lander or probe spacecraft has collected the data, this data will then be sent back to the orbiter spacecraft, and then the astronomers here on Earth will be able to receive these information or data via radio signals and using radio telescopes.